All right.
Yep.
Hello,
Whoa.
I'm Octu. I'm a 3D artist, and this was a mistake. I've compiled a list of miscellaneous, barely categorized game design tips. This was originally going to have a lot more structure. It was going to have me making a fun game premise with little nuggets of wisdom sprinkled throughout, but then I decided to throw all that away and start over 4 days before the presentation. Boy, was that a good idea. I've been writing and rehearsing this thing up until this very moment, as I accidentally demonstrated a few minutes ago. So here I am now with a bunch of tips that that a lot of you probably already know, and judging by the games I've seen in VRChat, enough of you really don't. So if you watch GDC talks or a bunch of YouTube channels for this kind of stuff, this really won't be revolutionary, and this is a good time to craft up your mixed drinks for the after party. And if this presentation goes the way I expect it's going to go, start drinking them. So, number one, think like a user. In other words, what would an idiot do? The user knows less than you. You are the developer. You've spent a long time on your project. You've mastered everything because you made it. It can be hard at the best of times to remember that the rest of the world isn't you, but if you don't, you're on the fast track to making a bad game. Players won't understand basic things about your game going in. Most of them will just completely misunderstand the fundamental mechanics of how things work. Like, some people will go into a turn-based tactical strategy game and not understand how the turns work, even though you have them listed at the top. You have to go through a tutorial and all that stuff, and it's just kind of, people don't know how this stuff works usually. That's why tutorials exist. Players will miss important information, like, you ever have certain characters with certain things, certain details, stuff like that. My brain is having trouble coming up with examples. Let me think. You ever walk into a room with a particularly dangerous thing? No, that's not a good example. Players will miss important information. Well, I mean... Well, there's this game called Metal Gear Rising, and there's this particular moment in that game where you pick up a thing, and you're supposed to know to use that thing. And somehow, I didn't know that the game had consumable items in it for the entire time I played the damn thing. There's also a special, super mode you unlock, and it's actually a very important plot point, and there's this thing that pops up and tells you that you unlocked this special mode, and I didn't know that, and I beat the game without it. On the same thing, players will miss essential items. You ever watch a streamer and the streamer will just walk right past something that you know is there? You know it's there. There is a thing on the table. It is right friggin' there. They stared at it, but they did not pick it up. You are no exception. The only difference in you and that streamer is that the camera is rolling. You did that exact same thing. You just didn't notice, and you didn't have anyone to point it out to you. You're all idiots, so am I. Sometimes the user will know more than you, though. Because sometimes the user is a speedrunner. Sometimes the user is a power user. And sometimes the user is a fellow game developer. In those situations, if you decide to force the player to pick something up, force the player to acknowledge information, do all this kind of stuff, they will get really frustrated because usually it's not their first time encountering this information. So you gotta try to make sure both types of users can enjoy themselves. Essentially, Assume your user is an idiot, but plan for them being a genius. This is a blank slide. There was not going to be anything there. I don't know why I left that in, but it is a perfect opportunity for me to talk about the intro to Kingdom Hearts 2. Who's familiar with that? I don't know why I expected more of a response, but the game has a 2-hour-long unskippable tutorial. Now,
oh God,
imagine, if you would, a scenario where there's this massive tutorial, and at the very end, you discover a secret area. And that's essentially what happens in Kingdom Hearts 2. Imagine if you could just walk to that secret area. If you could just go there because you know it's there, then skip the whole 2-hour tutorial because, oh my God, more people need to do this kind of stuff. Like, one of the ideas that I had was have a tutorial area, but like you could do a trick jump out of it if you know how to do the kind of special trick jump that you're only supposed to learn later in the game. All this kind of stuff. So remember, assume your user is an idiot, but plan for them being a genius. Next slide. Show, don't tell. Also known as the Valve section, because Valve is really good at this. This doesn't require a lot of explanation, so I won't dwell on it super long. In general, wherever possible, you should try your best to explain a concept non-verbally. Oh, gotta be careful to pick this thing up. The best way for someone to learn is not to teach them, but to allow them to teach themselves. We'll get to that, but for now, here's this random picture of a hallway. Why did I include this? Well, because I'm a fan of 70s style corporate retro modernism. No, it's because this hallway is a simple example of the map developer guiding the eye. The windows are in a consistent pattern. Lost my path on the there. They're a simple shape that communicates that you can't go through them. The carpet bends towards the doorway. And my personal favorite detail, you can't walk into this room without seeing that the door is open. There are some more little things about this, like the fact that the door is recessed so that the door being open doesn't cause an impromptu piece of cover. That would be kind of awkward in that particular area, but that's the main thing. The main takeaway from this is just like small ways of guiding the player's eye, small ways of communicating information at a glance. But that's easier in a level than it is for an enemy or for a mechanic. So, come on, hit the next slide. This is a barnacle. The Half-Life kind, not the SpongeBob kind. By the way, hi, Kent. I'm sorry about that. I imagine most of you are familiar with these things, so why am I bringing it up? Because I think the way the game introduces you to them is fun. First, they're introduced in a safe environment. You can clearly see the barnacle on the ceiling, you have plenty of room to maneuver around it, and you have a weapon to deal with it if you feel like it. Second, it's well designed to communicate how it works. Big thing glued to the ceiling with a tongue dangling down really has only one way it could conceivably attack you, and that's the way it does attack you. Thirdly, just in case it wasn't obvious from the design, the game goes out of its way to show you how it works by having a bird fly right into its waiting tongue. Doubles as a chance for them to show off the fantastic animation they made for these things eating something, which is really considerate because I don't think anyone has ever died to one of these things before. I could keep going about these things forever. Seriously, pretty much every enemy and gimmick in every Valve game is introduced either non-verbally or otherwise diegetically. There are too many examples across all the games to count, and if you want more, though, I recommend watching Game Maker's Toolkit video on the Half-Life's Invisible tutorial. It is good stuff, really good stuff. So next, reward your player. More. Do it more. Have you ever put in the effort to do something really difficult in a game, like, say, beating a fight with special limitations, reaching a really hard-to-reach area through creative platforming on level geometry, or otherwise doing something really outlandish, only to get no reward at the end? There's a term for that. Negative possibility space. As far as I'm aware, the term was coined by Extra Credits in their video on the concept of the same name. To quote their video, negative possibility space is the vacuum you as a designer leave behind when you do something that creates an expectation in the player. Every game has this to some degree, and it can't be helped. How are you supposed to know that a player decided to beat your game without using any magic, or without killing anything, or without walking? Thank you, YMFAH. I know you're doing this kind of stuff. All right. Another thing. Oh, no, I forgot to switch the slide on that one. Nice. Don't punish your players. Conversely, a player should ideally never feel like you yourself are punishing them, because you want their failures to feel earned, not as cheap recompense for them not being clairvoyant. Right. Rewards are better anyway. So this is a very famous example of a lot of things. Like, you probably have seen this thing before. This is rested XP. In World of Warcraft, they had this thing where people would play the game until they died, and that was a problem. So the solution that they came up with was a XP penalty. For if you played the game for an extended period of time, you would slowly start to earn less and less XP. This caused people to flip their collective shit. So they came up with the idea of flipping it on its head, reducing all other XP, but giving people a bonus. So when they log out of the game, they build up this kind of XP over the time, and when they log back in the next day, they get an XP bonus. Fundamentally the exact same thing, but packaged in a different way. They made a punishment into a reward, and everyone rejoiced. Up next, fudge some numbers. This is the most important part of the talk today. Please pay attention. What do I mean by fudging numbers? Tweaking values, messing with AI, breaking the intended flow in small ways. In short, give players every advantage you can. Everyone does it. And by I mean everyone. Assassin's Creed and Doom value the last bit of health as more hit points than the rest of it to encourage the feeling of just surviving. In Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, distractions like the alarm clock are based on how well you're doing, makes last-second defusals more likely. In BioShock, if you would have taken your last point of damage, you instead were invulnerable for about 1 to 2 seconds, so you get more barely survived moments. In System Shock, we made your last bullet do double damage, a similar trick to the last bit of health thing. There's a whole thread of these, and for some reason, most of them are deleted, and I don't know why, but I got those ones, so, nice. Very common things like this. My personal favorite is this thing called Coyote Time, which is covered in this fantastic thread by Matty Thorsen, the designer of Celeste, where it goes over all the little platforming tricks that they forced into the game. Coyote Time is when you walk over the edge of a platform, you can still jump for a few frames after you've left the platform. Because even though you're technically falling, the game is giving you a little bit of extra leeway on that. And the reason why that's important is, who here has attempted platforming in VRChat? VRChat does not have Coyote Time. If you ever walk off the edge of a platform, you cannot jump. And that causes some annoyances. So I recommend anyone who ever tries to make a platformer in VRChat, please make your own custom jump to it so that you don't have that, because my God, that is annoying, as everyone here can probably attest. So, up next. Tools and keys, and how to tell the difference. Everyone know what a tool and key is? That's a tool and that's a key. See, the main difference there is the number of prongs. No. A tool and a key are two different things that I just kind of chose those names. They're not really necessarily widely accepted terms in game development. A tool and a key have many forms, may be required to progress, but the difference is a tool has many uses and a key has one use. What that essentially means is you can have a crowbar in a game that is meant to open a door, and that's it. That's all the crowbar does. And that isn't a tool at that point. That's a key, essentially. It's a key with a different skin attached. You could have had it be a locked door, but instead you made it a crowbar because screw it, why not? The reason why I bring this up is because, hey, it's more fun to have imagination with your keys, but you really should be more inventive, have tools that people use more persistently throughout your design. Like, here's a good example. Metroid. You see Metroid there? They got the doors that need to be unlocked with the special weapons, but the special weapons are also weapons. Could you imagine if you had to find a key for the doors? That'd be a pain in the butt now, wouldn't it? Another good example of this one is actually that right there is Silent Hill Downpour. Silent Hill Downpour is not a good game, but it does this one thing very good, which is the various weapons you can pick up in the world can be used to unlock certain doors. So in this one, you see he's got a crowbar there, and that can be used to unlock boarded up doors. But those weapons can also break. So you can use that weapon to fight off some monsters, fight something, but it might break, and then you won't be able to use it to open up a special door that might have ammo or something very important inside. Which is a very clever little bit of design. I like that. Very smart. Also, in Castlevania Symphony of the Night has the different forms. Those are imperative to exploring the area, but they're also just kind of useful in general. So like the wolf form, it lets you move a lot faster after a little bit of buildup. It's not practical for most movement, but it is good for covering a lot of distance in a short period of time. Bat form lets you fly, avoid certain enemies. Mist form makes you invulnerable and fly very slowly, but they're also all required to enter certain areas in the map. See, that's what I'm kind of talking about here. That's what I'm kind of getting at is try to find ways to incorporate elements of your design into the progress instead of merely having the progress be unlocked with arbitrary forms of keys. There. And then lastly, break rules. Please, break every single rule I've said here. Break every single tip. Everything I've said can be broken. Not every rule applies to every situation. Not every tool applies to every situation. And not every tip is useful. There'll be times when you can't stick to these due to budget or time. But please, understand a rule before you break it. Jesus Christ. So, one of the main problems that I keep running into is people will subvert these kinds of things. And these are very helpful. They're very useful. But if you don't understand why people do certain things, if you don't then do those things, you're not subverting, you're just being stupid. Also, this was meant to be more of a closing out thing, but I have some extra time here, so I will say these are all very broad ground level stuff. If you have any more specific advice for your projects and you don't mind me absolutely flooding your DMs, hit me up. I'd love to help. I just enjoy like coming up with ideas and concepts for game design. So if you ever need like an idea for an enemy, you can just lay out your designs for me and I will follow up with you with a bunch of different things that'll play off the various systems you have in place already. Yeah, I just enjoy this kind of stuff, you know?
Cool.
It's fun.
It's good stuff.
And I still have 10 friggin' minutes. Who has a lot of questions?
Can you go to the
if anybody has the questions,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's go.
You gotta remove the crowbar.
Alright, we gotta stall.
This is a ways.
Was that a submerged joke? It was a submerged joke.
Forgive me, because throughout that entire thing, I was just kind of autopiloting. Ah, there we go. Think like a user. What would an idiot do? You know, sign up to make a presentation when they've never done a presentation before. That's one thing. Hey.
Yeah, great.
Completely improvised without a script.
So there's a question from Stream Chat. So if you're ready to answer.
Yeah, might as well.
So the question is, how would you implement a show don't tell and advantage to experienced players at the same time?
Show don't tell and advantage to the experienced players? Well, you wouldn't need to. The show don't tell would supersede that, because if the person already knows the information, then they don't need to be told it. Like, I think they might have a misunderstanding of who that experienced players aren't necessarily people that are familiar with genre trappings. They're just people that are like your power users, the people that fully understand your game and would be pissed off by a tutorial. And honestly, the reason why you'd want to use show don't tell is because it's the alternative to a tutorial where it doesn't patronize you. As I mentioned in Half-Life, the introduction to the barnacle is a bird that you kind of spook, flies into the tongue of the barnacle, and gets munched on, which is a lot better than having to sit and wait for some character to exposit to you how barnacles work, which is how Dead Space did things. Do you have any idea how many times they told you to cut off the friggin' limbs? Like, you kind of get it by the third time. Especially since by that time you have fought several of the damn things, but they do it again. They say it on the wall. They have an audio log. They have a radio message. They have a person directly call you and tell you to do that thing. And to round it all off, they have a pop-up that then tells you, non-diegetically, to cut the limbs off of the monsters. I fucking get it, dude.
You missed it.
So yeah, the bird flying into the little monster thing is a little better.
Nice touch.
So to piggyback on top of that question, you get it, we get it, but as you preface your talk, if the user is an idiot, you think you get it, but the majority of people might not get it. So how do you reconcile that type of interaction, and also knowing the fact that even if you tell a user 3 times to do something, they might completely miss it 3 times? So do you think there's still an advantage to continuously getting players?
Playtest.
Yep.
Playtest a hell of a lot. Find some people that have no idea what they're doing and keep throwing them against the wall of your design until they just kind of get it before you have time to explain it. That's the number one thing, is you have to find playtesters. Does that answer your question, or did you have more?
Explain your design yourself when you're playtesting, which is a sin so many developers commit when they go with a playtesting group, and they're like, as soon as somebody's struggling, they start just explaining, which is completely pointless and ruins the whole point of the playtest.
Observe and write things down.
Yeah, because it's very hard mentally to see people struggle at your game, because it kind of shows that you failed, and most people don't like it, and they start explaining, and that's really bad.
By the way, is the mic picking you up? Because that was a good point, and I hope that's in the video.
He can voice boost himself.
It's not a failure, it's a room for improvement.
Nice.
Yeah.
Still got 5 minutes. Anyone want to kill some time with me?
I think we're 45 minutes behind.
I mean, yeah, we got
Okay,
behind, but if anybody has questions,
rock, paper, scissors?
I don't know the rule. It's a joke.
How do you deal with people continually missing stuff? Because I'm one of the people in VRChat who released like a game world, and it's just like, man, all the playtesters got that, but like it seems like now it's released. Like I feel like it's that the problem with like when you're doing an experiment, just your presence there changes the outcome.
One of two things. Either find a way to force them, or find a way to make it not matter. So, like, Half-Life does the... Again, Half-Life, bringing up Half-Life, does the thing in Ravenholm where you, in order to get past a certain doorway, you have to pick up a saw blade that's currently blocking your way in the doorway, and at that exact moment a zombie walks around the damn corner, and the only thing you can really do is purposefully drop the saw blade or throw it at the zombie. So that kind of explains, oh, you can do that to zombies. That forces players to get into that situation where they have one button to press to learn the lesson, essentially. Alternatively, you can make it like something that's, as I mentioned, that they don't need to. So like in Portal 2, there's this moment where you have to throw a portal, and you probably aren't going to remember which portal is which at that exact moment, so the game will fudge the numbers, and it will make whatever portal you choose to shoot the correct one by default, so that people don't have that failure moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me go look for that.
There's actually two such moments.
Oh.
One during the part where he kills you, and one during the final confrontation.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
I forgot that part where
picked the
it
right
kills
one
you.
for the moon. I forgot that.
Igbar, I figured
Oh,
out.
man. Oh, yeah.
Just 2 years too late.
Spoilers.
The Cyathlon.
It's a game from
Question.
2012.
You know, when people kept climbing up on the Cyathlon, and I was like, no,
Jordo,
don't
shut
do
up.
that, and I added the light.
You're fine.
Octu, is your talk an indication that you're making a game, working on a game?
Well, I've been working on a couple of them, mostly just design docs. I'm kind of slowly learning the tools that I need to actually put them into action. But you'll see about them when I get to them. You know, busy with commissions lately, though.
I am.
Though I am open for like consultation ever. So if any of you are working on your own games, I love helping with that stuff. So come at me, please.
Not like there's 2 game jams coming up real soon or nothing.
It's on your
okay.
Nice.
Last question?
Yeah, I've got a question. I'm curious about the best way to integrate a tutorial. Like, let's say you have like a story-driven world, and the tutorial is like, you should probably do this tutorial. It's probably pretty important. How do you combat like when someone joins a world, they're already kind of on like a time limit, like they may only be in this world for like 20 minutes. Do you kind of, I'm glad you brought up like the Kingdom Hearts example, because like in that you're doing like this section of the game, and at the end of it, like, or towards the end of it, you kind of realize like, oh, this has just been a tutorial. Do you force users to go through that, or do you like give them the option to opt into a tutorial?
That's actually very interesting. I kind of touched on it earlier, but I don't really think I made the point I was trying to make, which was for VRChat World, since you can't exactly save whether people have done a tutorial or not, what you could do, number one, is you could make the tutorial a side thing. Like when you enter the world, there's a clearly marked tutorial area, and you go in there, you do the tutorial. Alternatively, you can put them in the tutorial area and force them to do the tutorial, but users that are more experienced will know that they can take the shortcut out and skip the tutorial after they've already done it.
IKEA design.
Yeah, it's a good
Does
point.
that?
Thanks for answering.
Okay.
Yeah, that answers it.